Yeah, I get to introduce Pastor Lynn to come forward. It starts this week, right? No. Oh, I wish it started this week. Yeah. Next Wednesday, same time, everyone will be back. Yes. In Meredith Hall. That's right. Same time. Yes. Hey, thank you all for coming. This is kind of new charted territory for me. They trained me in seminary to talk about the Bible and all these things, and I'm not real good about talking about myself. Don't mention that to Pastor Kirk, because he'll talk your ear off about why, and give you a whole lot of reasons why. So I'm a little bit nervous about that, which probably means you're going to get a little bit of history in this presentation, a little bit of theology, maybe some practice, because that's kind of my default. That's where I go. The other thing that makes me nervous is these are my pictures that I took. And I'm not a photographer at all. And some of you are brilliant photographers. So be kind, have grace. I think the new phones cover a lot of sins, perhaps. So maybe that's the case. But anyway, it's been good for me to kind of go back over, and I had a remarkable experience, and just glad I get to share some of it with you. And I hope you learn it. The Camino is a kind of a fascinating topic, and it's very, very interesting what it is and why it is and what it's become. So hopefully you'll get a sense a little bit of that as we go along today. So can I open some prayer? Let's pray. Lord, thank you for the pilgrimage that we are all on, each and every one of us as followers of you. We are journeying, and we are on a pilgrimage to the promised land. And in this life, we learn lessons, and we experience you along the way. And we thank you for the opportunity to be a part of your church and to share together just a little bit of glimpses of how you're working in our midst. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. We have a number of folks who are watching online, so welcome. Glad that you could join us. All right, let's talk about the Camino de Santiago. Camino, does anybody know what the word Camino means in Spanish? It means the way or the road. So Camino de Santiago is the way to Santiago, okay? The way to Santiago. And then sometimes it's Santiago de Compostela, and I'll talk a little bit about what that word Compostela might mean. Let me start by just asking this question about a spiritual pilgrimage. What is a spiritual pilgrimage? I came up with 4 things. Actually, there's a theologian who's takes groups on the Camino, and his name is Jeremiah Gibbs. So he helped me think through this a little bit. And he suggests that there are 4 components to a spiritual pilgrimage. And the first is, it is a journey to a holy place. Probably the very first spiritual pilgrimage in church history was Helena. She was the mother of Constantine. All right, this is the church history portion of the program tonight. Helena was the mother of Constantine. Constantine was the emperor of Rome back in about the year 300, during that time. So imagine about 270 years after Jesus died, you have a new Roman emperor. The Roman emperors before Constantine were very hostile to the faith. Some of them more than others, but there was incredible persecution. Constantine had a vision. He converted to Christianity and subsequently converted everybody in Rome to Christianity. That was the new religion. His mother, Helena, became a Christian because he declared it to be, but she was very, very curious. This is the mother of the emperor of Rome. She made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, a journey, very important and very influential part of church history. She journeyed to find relics, find out in Palestine and in Jerusalem where Jesus walked and where this happened. One of the things she was searching for was the actual cross. Maybe she could find the cross of Jesus or the tomb where he was laid and where he was buried. If you've been to the Holy Land, if you've been to Jerusalem, you know that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is over the proposed site of where Jesus was crucified and buried. It's real famous. Well, Helena, she founded that church. She established it because when she went and she on this pilgrimage, she journeyed, she began to ask people, where was he crucified? Where was he buried? And on that site at church, and you still can go there today, it's quite remarkable. She found what she believed to be relics or part of the cross. She took part of that back with her to Rome. But that was the first spiritual pilgrimage. After that, it became quite a thing for pilgrims, for Christians to journey and to see. Now, for them, it was a long walk. I mean, a pilgrimage was not some small thing, but they walked. And immediately after pilgrims started journeying, what happened? Commerce, trinkets, commercialization started happening. It happened almost immediately, and it became a real thing on the journey to Jerusalem. If you go to Jerusalem today, it's still very much alive and well. One of the funniest parts about pilgrimages is where a lot of people travel, suddenly a lot of people want to start selling you things, and that certainly happened. So, journey to a holy place. This is true in Islam. They are required to go to Mecca. I mean, they make a pilgrimage, and they have different places. So, at its most basic, that's what this is. Now, for me, this was not a part of my spiritual pilgrimage. As a Protestant, for me, it was not. I didn't have the intention of doing this, that I was going to go to some sacred site. I don't think that places are any more sacred. That's part of my Protestant upbringing. We believe that the Holy Spirit is unleashed into all the world and lives in our hearts. And so no one place is any more sacred. Technically, the tomb where Jesus was buried really is, I mean, at the end of the day, Christians are always arguing about, was it here or was it here, was it here? The answer to that question is, where was he buried, is, who cares? He wasn't there very long, and he's alive. And so we don't venerate these places. Now, but for a lot of Catholic folks, Santiago is a holy site. And it goes back to about the year 814. There was a hermit living in part of Spain, in Galatia, and he had a vision of stars and a field of stars. It led him, this is the theory, the myth, it led him to a place where there was a tomb and a field that contained 3 bodies. A number of things happened, but basically they declared that these bones were St. James, one of the apostles and followers of Jesus. They claimed that some miracles happened in that field, and suddenly there was a lot of buzz. We've discovered James's bones, and then they create a cathedral to house them. Suddenly you have a number of people wanting to make a pilgrimage to go see this holy site, okay? Now, the cynic would say that when you have a holy site, you have a lot of people coming, you increase the economy and the traffic, and that wasn't convenient to create holy sites. I have no idea how much of this is true, but for me, this was not a motivating factor. But the Camino became very popular early on. One of the archbishops declared this to be a holy site. So this is in the town of Santiago. This is the finishing point of the Camino, where you can go to the cathedral, and it's believed that the disciple of Jesus, James, his bones, his relics are housed there. So that's the holy part of this journey. So in the Middle Ages, the Santiago de Compostela reached its peak. It was at the high point of pilgrims making this journey. By the 12th century, it began to be really organized. This is really interesting. In 1140, the Codex Calixtinus was developed. It's regarded as the world's very first travel guide. And it became from the Santiago, people making this. And it provided the would-be pilgrim with rudiments of what he or she would need to know while en route. It would have provided talk about the way and which way you go. What would happen is towns would build bridges over streams to get to their town to increase traffic so that people would come and stay and buy things in their cities. Kings and queens would build hospitals. along the way for pilgrims who needed it because they thought this would gain favor for them in heaven. And suddenly, all kinds of things happened, but there was a flood of people making this long pilgrimage. After kind of peaking in the Middle Ages, it began to taper off a little bit, this pilgrimage. And there's probably several causes that have been cited. Spain started having wars with England and others in Europe, but maybe the biggest factor was actually the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther was not real kind to this, and I'll talk about this in a little bit. But 2 centuries later, then the Enlightenment happened, and people were much more interested in science and the mysticism of relics, and this probably led to some tapering off of popularity. I found this really interesting, though. I'm a little bit of a history person, but during the Enlightenment period, one of the founding fathers of the United States, John Adams, apparently he took a journey to Paris at one point, but instead of sailing the whole way, he did a land journey through Spain to get to Paris. And he wrote in one of his journals, 1779, he wrote that he always regretted that we could not find time to make a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela. Isn't that interesting? That was one of the regrets of life. I'm not sure why John Adams would have had that, but that's where he was. So, what is a spiritual pilgrimage? For a lot of folks, it's a journey to a supposed holy place and all that entails, that by proximity to that holy place, maybe there's some blessing or something there. For me, that was not part of why I was attracted to do this. The second thing about a spiritual pilgrimage is that it's a difficult journey. It's just difficult. It's long walk through rugged terrain, through hills. One of the funny things that I would tell people is that everything you want to know about the Camino journey, you can find online now. Everything. And I would always read online about the next stage I was going to walk the next day. And I would know everything about it. You could do YouTube videos, everything. But I quickly discovered that when people would write, they'd say, oh, tomorrow it's just gentle rolling hills. Or mostly flat. I quickly caught on that translates into Phoenician as 2 camelback mountains will be standing in your way. I mean, I'm like, every day I'm like, really? Gentle? There was nothing gentle about that hill. Anyway, that's just side. It is a difficult journey. I mean, you think about walking the whole route of, if you do the route that I took, which is the old historic route, it's about 500 miles. And weather, hills, all kinds of things. Sure, it's easier today with cell phones and modern conveniences, but think about someone in the Middle Ages making this pilgrimage, not knowing all that information. A pilgrimage is something that you set out on and you push your body, something difficult. A spiritual pilgrimage is also intended for transformation. You do this because you want to be changed in some way. And I find this to be a big part of the Camino today. A lot of people go and walk this journey because they want transformation. They really want something to happen inside of them. Maybe they're in middle age, maybe they're in middle life, maybe their kids have moved out, maybe they are recently gone through a hard portion of their life, a loss of a spouse, a divorce. There's a lot of people. I just need to get away. I just need to do something, and I need to find whatever I'm looking for. Not a lot of definition to that, but they're searching for something. I was walking one day with a woman, and she, I'm guessing she was in her early 60s, and we were just chatting. She said, what do you do? And I said, I'm a pastor. And immediately, when I said I'm a pastor, she grabbed me by the arm. She said, have you found it yet? I said, well, found what? And she said, I'm out here looking for it, and I have not found it. Have you found it? I said, well, I don't know what you're looking for. I know what. But she thought that by going on this journey, something magical, mystical, something would happen inside of her. And she was yearning for it, yearning for that. And I think that's a lot of people, and they think that this might be, and for some, maybe it does happen, and that's wonderful. I'm not downplaying that at all. Maybe this journey does help folks. I would say, I hope it's space and time for them to discover the Holy Spirit's work in their life, and if so be it, wonderful. And I hope I got some of that. But I certainly did this because it was difficult. It was something I wanted to do to really push myself. But I also hoped that I would be changed by it. So I'm in line with both of these. The fourth reason why people go on a spiritual pilgrimage is to disconnect you from your routine. And it certainly does that. It certainly does that. And I found that to be a great blessing, to be able to be outside of, and you are forced to be in a new routine. You can go on vacation and still be on your phone and still do every same schedule you do. This really forces you to do something different and get out of that routine. And for me, that was very helpful. I am best, me personally, motivated externally. I love being in school because they forced you to read these books. On my own, I might not do it. I could never have been a full-time academic because academics are internally motivated. I'm much more motivated by as one pastor said, the relentless return of Sundays. They're always coming. They just keep coming, right, Kirk? They keep coming. But that's good. I like that. That's good for me. But this got me out of that routine for a month. So, okay. That's a spiritual pilgrimage. That gives you a little background into what this is. And so why did Martin Luther hate the Camino so much? He was not a fan at all. This is our Protestant reformer that we look to, and he did not think kindly of it one bit. Well, the main reason, there were maybe 2-3 reasons, but the main reason why Luther didn't like the Camino is because by the Middle Ages, it started to become a means of penance or indulgence. So if you did wrong, the priest might say, well, here's your penance. You need to go walk to Santiago. And so then your sins will be forgiven. Then they'll be cleared. Or your uncle might be kicked up a notch in heaven if you do all this work. I mean, it really evolved into that. There are many spiritual pilgrimages. The pilgrimage to Jerusalem is probably historically the most famous. The pilgrimage to Rome is probably second, and then Camino is probably third. Now, Martin Luther, before he started the Reformation, he himself made a spiritual pilgrimage to Rome. He wrote extensively about it, and that was when he went to confront the Pope, but it was a spiritual pilgrimage. This is what monks and people did, but it really became something difficult, and Luther just said, no, 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 no. We do not earn our salvation. You cannot, by walking a long distance, going to a holy site, you cannot absolve sin. Only God can forgive. So he had good theological reasons why he was not a fan. I completely understand where it devolved to. There were some other arguments that were smaller. Some people were going on the Camino and they were leaving for a long period of time, leaving their family, and they were abandoning their jobs and their work, and it was hurting the economy and hurting families. And so there were some practical reasons why he wasn't a fan of it. But so that's it. And I don't think I saw one Protestant church in Spain. Maybe one. I saw one. I thought, I bet that might be. But I saw many, many Catholic churches. And so, okay. So that's Martin Luther. So let me ask a series of questions, okay? I'm going to anticipate some questions you might have, and then at the end, I'll leave time for Q&A if you want to ask me some questions. But one of the questions I get from a lot of folks is, where did you stay? I mean, how does that work? Here you are walking every day, and you're going long distances. So there's really 3 choices if you're going to do the Camino. The first is what they call an albergue, and that's basically a Spanish word for hostel. And in all these towns, big and small, there are albergues, and they are basically dormitory-style rooms for pilgrims. And if you are a hardcore Camino person, they will argue and say you have to stay at the albergues because that's a part of this. It's an important part of it. Because here's what happens. You're walking with a group of people. You walk 15 miles. You come to a small town. Most of the people you've been walking with, you all stay together in the albergue, and you cook a meal together. Now, you're talking about people from Germany and France and people from all over the world. It's an eclectic, international group. And what they would say is when you stay in the albergue, you are developing great community. That's a huge part of this. And so some people do the Camino to meet new people, to develop this deep community, and that's wonderful. And that's not why I did the Camino, but I certainly see the attractiveness of it. I did the Camino because I wanted more solitude. I'm with people a lot. I love being with people. But I knew for me, I needed to have, I was really looking forward to a month where I could spend a lot of quiet time listening, praying. I did enjoy talking to people along the route, but that's not what I was looking for. So you can stay in an albergue, and I'll give you a picture of what they look like. That's it. And that men and women, everyone's in a dorm room. Some are a little bit more private, but then sometimes they have a pilgrim meal, so you all have a meal together. I mean, it's really neat. If you're one that can sleep in a big dorm room with people from all over the world, I'm not, but if you're one of those people, hey, more power to you. It's wonderful. And now, here's the thing about albergues is they don't take reservations. So for me, I did do this, but maybe once or twice. It wasn't much. And again, people who are really into the Camino will be like, Steve, you missed out on so much. I understand that. I also got to sleep, but probably more. But I do understand that, and I would not. For anyone that likes that, I would say do it. The stressful part is there's no reservation, so you walk, and the Caminos become very, very popular in certain seasons. And I went in a season that was a lot of people were there. What happens is, here's the picture. So you get there. Let's say they open at 2:00. You line your backpack up in order so when it opens at 3, you get a space. Well, what happens is if you don't get a space, and maybe that town has all the albergues are full, they'll say, well, there's another one 5 miles down the road. So what it does create is people got to get up early, and they're kind of racing to get to the next town. That didn't feel all that fun for me. I didn't want to have that worry, that stress. So I did more of kind of hostels where you could reserve a room in a place. Sometimes they were shared bathrooms. I had that quite frequently. These were not really nice. You can do nice hotels. They have that, but these were very, very basic. Now, here's the big downside. The way I did it, the big downside is you make reservations, you are locked in. So that means today you're walking 15 miles. With albergues, you might go 10 miles and go, oh, I'm tired. I'm going to stop at this one. And I didn't have that luxury. I had to make these reservations way in advance, and I was kind of stuck to it. So pros and cons. And again, they have some very nice hotels you can stay at, and you can make those reservations if you want. But every little town has it. So different approach to how you want to do it. But that's how the lodging works. The albergues are $15 a night, really cheap, really inexpensive. So for a lot of people, I do like that you don't have to have great wealth to do this. This is something that you really can do inexpensively. Okay, so another question I got is from people who know the Camino is, which route did you take? For me, this is going to be hard to see. I'm not sure you can see this really well, but I did the green route, which is the Camino Frances, which is the old historic route. Do you see the green up there? So if you do the entire route of the Camino, you actually start in France. Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. Do you see that up in the upper right? Technically, that's in France, and the first day you cross the border, okay? and the first day is straight uphill in the Pyrenees. Straight uphill. It's the hardest day by far in the Camino. Knowing that, and also knowing that to get to St. Jean de Port, it's an extra travel day. I mean, it's some logistics, and I only had so much time. I started in Pamplona, okay? So I started my journey thinking, oh, people are going to say, oh, you started in Pamplona? Oh, you didn't do the whole thing? You know, I thought I'd get a lot of that. Well, actually what I found was people would ask me, where did you start? And I'd say Pamplona, and they'd go, wow, like, you're doing a long way. So you kind of get everything. People start wherever they want to start, okay? So from where I started in Pamplona to the Santiago, it's about, I think probably 400 miles. So, it was a month of walking 12, 15 miles a day, some days a little bit more. And there are some big towns along the way. Pamplona, where I started, Logroño, Burgos, León, and I have some pictures from some of those different places. Now, over the years, there are different caminos, so there's a number of them. The one that's really popular these days is there's one that goes through Portugal on the red, the Portuguese, I guess that goes along the coast, not as far. I mean, theoretically, there are some people that do the Camino from Rome. I mean, it's just they spend, a whole summer. I mean, you can create this however you want to create it. But in all of these Caminos, these different routes, there are services, albergues and things prepared for pilgrims to do. The historic one is the one I did, which is about 70% of pilgrims do the one I did. It's the famous popular one, Camino Frances. So it has all the historic things, and it's really well populated and all those things. But you read online, some people really love, some are harder than others. The one up north is very hilly, Del Norte, so you got to be more of a hiker, like the mountains and that kind of thing. So, but I started in Pamplona and traveled all that way. This gives you a little bit closer. So Pamplona's there on the right, and I went through this region, okay? All right, yeah, this is the route that I took. This is one of the early days that I was walking. So you can see there's a trail, there's incredible scenery. I went through late April, early May, and these fields were stunning of yellow. And they're, I don't know this exactly, but these yellow fields, they're mostly wheat fields, but every 4th or 5th year you rotate the crops. This is a kind of mustard. Yeah, and there's some different technical names for it, but I didn't care about that too much. It was just stunning, the beauty of it. So you can see in a lot of ways there's just a trail, there's a marked path. You go through fields, you can almost always see other pilgrims. The closer you get to Santiago, the more crowded the route becomes. So there was one day when I didn't see anyone for a couple hours, and I didn't like that too much. I was worried, am I on the right road, You could usually see somebody out in front of you, well in front. But that's what a lot of it looked like, is certainly in the early days. One of the things about Camino is you just aren't really sure what the weather's going to be like. So in May, is it going to be hot? You have to carry everything. Now, you stop every night so you can do laundry. You don't have to carry a tent or sleeping bag. So you don't have to carry a lot, but you are carrying everything on your backpack. So you want to make it minimal. So my big decision was, do I carry a heavy coat, which is going to be heavy, or not? I didn't know what the weather. At the last minute, I decided yes. And I'm so glad, because I got cold and rainy. I wore that coat almost every day, so I'm really glad I took it. But somebody told me April, May could have been 90 degrees. You just don't know. But I got kind of a cold, rainy stretch. How many of you have seen this movie? Have you seen this movie? People ask me, why did you decide to do this? I had heard about the Camino from people, and I really like walking. One of the things that I do, Usually my rhythm, my week on Thursday afternoons, not this time of year, but I go on a hike around here. That's how I do my sermon. A lot of my sermon work, I work really well when I'm out walking, and especially when I'm out away from everything. I just need to clear my head and really think through. That's kind of the rhythm of my week. So I thought, wow, I like walking. I've heard about this Camino. There's some religious aspects to it. So I was curious. And then this movie came out with Martin Sheen. I'll just say this is, it's well worth watching. It's a good movie. It really does represent a lot of, you'll see the albergues. It was filmed actually on the Camino Frances that I did. So it's not Oscar winner of the year, movie of the year by any stretch. But if you want to know about the Camino, this really does give you a feel of the community of people you meet. And it's Martin Sheen. He's a really good actor, and his son's in it also. So if you haven't seen it and you want to know about the Camino, I would recommend it. Now, I'm guessing Martin Sheen in this, he's in his 60s when he did this pilgrimage. This is one of my big surprises. I thought I was going to be the old man walking with all these college kids. I was really thinking, can I do this? I was stunned at how many people were in their 60s, 70s. I really was surprised. I did not feel like the old person on the Camino. There were, I can't stress that enough. It was really encouraging. It was really surprising, but there were a lot of older couples, some singles too, that did the way, and they trained for it. And again, if you can do this where you go at your own pace, you can take 6 weeks, 7 weeks if you want, but it's very popular. Okay, so where did I start? I already mentioned that. I started in Pamplona. That was day one right there. It was raining. Yeah, it was raining hard on day one, but that's Pamplona right there where I started. Or I already showed you that. So that's the first steps I took in Pamplona. That is the monastery cathedral right there. In every town, you have Catholic churches, many, and some are small, and you have one Catholic church. I started in Pamplona, and the first thing I did, and this is what all pilgrims do, is you go in the town you start in, and you get a passport, a book, okay? So that's what I got. This is my passport, and everywhere you stop, you get a stamp. And so you can verify your journey, okay? So that was my first stamp right there on my passport. I stayed at this place, and they stamped my book, and by the end, it gets full. I can explain some of the technical things about this. Later on, you'll see that Julie and our daughter Haley joined me. They joined me for the last 110 kilometers in a town called Sarria. In order to be officially certified for doing the Camino, you have to start in Sarria. I'm not sure why that is, but you have to at least do 110 kilometers. So you got to get a stamp. In order to get a certificate at the end, you had to show your book. You got all your stamps. So some people get into this more than I did, but it's fine. But yeah, you get your stamp. Some people, I watch people like you stop at a coffee shop and they'd be standing in line to get their stamp. And I thought, anyway. So a lot of people have asked me, like, what were the days like? I mean, what did you do each day? And you mostly try and get up early, and you do your walk. And you have some days are really long, some days not quite as long, but I've planned it out so that I know where I'm going to stay that day. So you usually start with, you have coffee, you find a place that has coffee in the morning. The Spanish daily rhythm is different than American. They close down from like 4 to 7 and take siesta. That's really, really a thing. And so, especially in rural small towns, if you're running late and you've been walking all day and you are starving, and you get there at 4:15 and you're like, everything's closed. How can that be? So you try and start early. So usually you leave out over a bridge. Sometimes this is one of my first days. You start out under a tunnel. You go over a famous bridge, just like that. I don't think this one is quite Roman era, but there were many of these that were Roman era bridges that you travel over. That's what the early days looked like quite a bit. just trails and pilgrims and people. Some people wanted to come up, and talk a lot. Other people were there for very solitary reasons, so you kind of got the whole thing. A lot of people went in couples. Some groups walked together. When you're walking every day, though, in long stretches, you tend to want to go at your own pace. So if you're going with someone else, like when I had Julie and Haley with me, we all walked at our own pace. You get into a rhythm, and so you're not really worried about let's stay together all the time, because that's kind of the rhythm. You meet new friends along the way. I met these two along the way. We had some good time together. That's a typical picture of what some of these smaller towns, the very European streets look like. So you have a combination of walking on paths through fields, and then there's times when you're walking on pavement. And then there are times when you're actually walking along a highway. You kind of have to be prepared for all of it. Different sections, but I loved these old European towns, and just charming and polite and nice, and it's what you imagine old Europe to be like. That was maybe my favorite part of this journey, is just to be in a completely different cultural context. Not many people in these rural towns speak English. They kind of pride themselves on people who don't learn English. They're not giving in. And so I had to rely on my college Spanish, and it was fun. To be able to order and talk to people and fumble and be corrected. But that to me was a lot of this journey. A lot of churches, a lot of castles, a lot of cathedrals. So this is entering into one of my very first days. And then this is typical of every small town you'd go to. There is a Catholic church, very ornate. And in every town, they have a pilgrim's mass, usually at about 7 at night, 7:30. So this is every night. And so for pilgrims, they go into the church, you experience a Catholic mass, and I did this many times. It's in Spanish. For me, this was, I really enjoyed it. A lot of quiet, just listening to the sacred music. One night, I slipped in the back of a church just like this, and the choir looked like Mountain View's choir, sounded like it, a different language, but they were having their rehearsal and practice, and I just sat and listened, and it was Wednesday night, just like ours. I thought, wow, this is really neat. I got a video of them singing, and the Pilgrim's Mass, so, towards the end of the Mass, they have communion. Well, as a Protestant, I'm not allowed to take communion, so I would usually slip out at that point. But what I learned later on is if I had stayed in the Mass to the very, very end, the priest gives a blessing to all the pilgrims, whether you're Catholic or not. So if you wanted to, you could stay, and the priest would bless you for your next day. But that's the rhythm of the day. You get up, you have some coffee, you walk. About 3 p.m, you stop. You maybe get a bite to eat, and you wash clothes for the next day. You don't do that every day, but you kind of get into this rhythm. Then you go to the Pilgrim Mass, and you're pretty exhausted. I took a book along, a big book, but I didn't do a ton of reading because I was tired, and you have things to do. But I'll tell you, the rhythm of that day, repeating that rhythm every day, was so wonderful. I really got used to it, and I missed it when it was over. It was so out of my realm of normal, but that's how it worked. That's a typical morning. We were walking, and so what happens is you see the next town along the way, and it looks like, oh, we're almost there. That's a lot longer than it looks. There's an optical illusion, but boy, I had so many just really pretty scenes where you're just walking and you can see this old place, and you'd always see the cathedral in the distance. I met some new friends along the way. Those two walked with me for about a mile. Again, this is just some of the beautiful scenery, lots of flowers, lots of fields along the way. These narrow streets in Spain. I'm not sure which town this is. I'm not I've traveled with people that detail everything, and they have a journal, and every moment of every trip and every day they write down and journal and keep that. I'm the extreme opposite of that. It's just the way my brain works. I like to see pictures and memories. So I guess I could go back on your phone, and I could tell you, they'll tell you where you took this picture, but I don't have that kind of detail, but I have just all these fond memories of each of these towns that I went through. This is one of the larger towns, and I went to Mass in that cathedral, and this was a little bit more of a cosmopolitan. This might have been Logroño. I think this was Logroño, so this is a little bit bigger town that I stayed in. But I'll tell you, in Spain, no matter the weather, everyone eats outside. It was so different than Phoenix. I mean, it is, I don't live there, and I'm just passing through, so I couldn't tell you too much, but it just felt so much more communal, community. We eat meals together, and we do it outside, and everyone's outside. It's just part of that culture. And it was really attractive, and you'd walk, and you'd just hear lots of laughter, and that's what you'd see. Again, another one of the churches that I would go into. Oftentimes when I got to a smaller town, I would slip into one of the churches just by myself and just sit for an hour. And that was refreshing and wonderful to be in a different context. One of the goals for me in the Camino was that I wanted to change my daily routine, but I also tried to be very intentional about prayer and solitude. Those are two of my goals that I wanted. So what I did is I picked each day a different person, and I prayed for that person all day. So each member of our staff, some personal friends and different people, I just said, well, this is their day, and I kept them in mind each day. And then I tried to pray with some mantras kind of as I walked. Again, I'm not recommending this. I'm not sure this is the right way to do it, but on one day, I would pray more confession. So I'd ask forgiveness and kind of each step kind of make that a mantra. And then the next day would be more like for asking, receiving grace. And so it would be like confession and grace back and forth. That was just the way I did it. But I found it to be really wonderful. People ask me, was the walking, how hard was it? Was it hard? And it was very hard. Especially the first 2 weeks. I mean, you do get your legs under you, but mentally it was hard. Physically, it definitely is hard. But I'll tell you at the end, I found the isolation and solitude much harder than I ever thought it would be. This surprised me. I thought, I'm with people a lot. This will be refreshing. It'll be wonderful. It'll be good. But about 2 weeks in, that got really hard for me. And I'd never done it before, so I didn't know what to expect. But I was really excited after 3.5 weeks to see Julie and Haley. I mean, I think I was kind of corny. I was like way too excited to see. But that's something that, this personal you learn about yourself, transformation. All right, what was your favorite part? People ask me what was my favorite part. Just this. I mean, walking in places like this. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is about day 4. And I just remember just standing, looking out over where I'm going and seeing those fields and the beauty in the fields and just saying, wow. Really rich time in prayer and God is good. And it reinforced this, hey, we're all on a journey. We're all walking towards, and sometimes life gets really, really hard, but we're heading somewhere, and we're heading somewhere really, really good. And so I just love this part of it every day, seeing it. There's another picture of kind of the scenery. In the middle of the Camino, there's about 5 days called it's a part of the territory called the Meseta, which is basically more flat, plain. Some people complain about the Meseta. They say it's repetitive, same thing over and over again. And so there are people who skip the Meseta. I loved it. I thought it was gorgeous. I didn't mind the repetitive. Each day did look roughly the same, but I just personally loved it. I didn't miss the hills too much. That was maybe a part of it. But there still were some hills on the Meseta, but that's one of the terms you'll hear people say, oh, well, I started after the Meseta because I didn't like that. But you didn't generally walk longer because it's flatter, but yeah, I got to see, there was snow in the distance and just incredible, beautiful landscapes and quiet. I tried to make it a goal of mine. This is kind of a little funny thing, but I set out on this journey saying to myself, okay, I'm not going to listen to anything. I'm not going to have the headphones in. I did pretty good on that. I found it about 2 p.m. when you're really tired and dragging, and it was getting hard mentally to put on some music or something. It helped me. But I did spend a lot of the day just listening and in quiet. But it's just another picture of the kind of beauty of the fields. I saw things like this all along the journey. There are a lot of, I guess the word is graffiti, but there's written words everywhere. And if you're taking notice, you'll see things written on bridges and underpasses. Sometimes there's interesting things to be said, but sometimes there's really neat things about people just motivating you to keep going, about God and God's goodness. And if you have eyes to see, there was also graffiti like you would see normal graffiti, and that was kind of sad. But every now and again when I got tired, I'd see a reminder of like this, and it would help me keep going. This is in Burgos. This is a cathedral in Burgos, one of the bigger towns. It's absolutely stunning. I got to Burgos and was able to do a tour of the cathedral inside. It's amazing. Have you ever been to Burgos? You went this summer, yeah. It's quite a remarkable, like you'd imagine a cathedral in Europe to be. This is the cathedral, even bigger, in León, another big city. I did not get to go inside this one, but I was able to walk around. León is a remarkable city, which you wouldn't think about Europe being like, and absolutely loved just walking the city streets in León. All right, another question I get from people, was it hard? Was it difficult? Yes. Some days were harder than others. There was a couple days that were extremely difficult. And I'll show you, I have some visible evidence of this. There was a day that it was cold and the wind was coming right at me. Fierce wind coming right at me. And it was also the longest day I was going to do. That day was extremely hard. And I had just planned it that way. I don't know why, but I walked with a guy and he said, "You're going to where?" Like, we're all stopping here and you're continuing on. I said, well, yeah. And I didn't know, But it was a very, very physically hard day. It was good though. I mean, I look back and I think I hadn't been pushed physically like that since high school, and that was just, you feel like accomplishment, but oh man, it was really hard. So I show you this picture because that's my hair sticking straight up because the wind was hitting me all day long, and that's what it did to my hair. And that's not really a smile. That's more of a, what the heck have I done? Why have I done this? Kind of look. Yeah, that's more of a smile, but the hair is still there. It was freezing cold. I was really cold. I had to buy gloves and yeah, I mean, I came from Phoenix at the end of April where it was, 98, 100. And so, but yeah, really cold. All right, this is a little bit of a humble brag. So this was that day. I did 51,000 steps that day. So yeah, it was, no. You should be going, you're crazy. You're crazy. Yeah, it was 22 point. So that was my longest day. The other thing about this I mean, again, if I was to do this again, no, I wouldn't have done this. No way. There was a very steep hill at the beginning of this too, and it was hard. Anyway. Here's another question you might ask. What's with the rocks? Everywhere you go in Spain and on the Camino, there are rocks. But it's kind of thing. It's a little bit like, honestly, if you've been to Sedona, they stack rocks everywhere. In Sedona, if you've been up there, pebbles, they're always stacking rocks. Don't know why. That's what they do. But you see a lot of that. So on the Camino, the people who really do the Camino, they take a rock with them. Pick one out and they carry it with them. There is a place, if you want to, there's a big place with a cross where lots of people place their rock. Now, in the Catholic tradition, what you're doing is you're placing it there and leaving it there, like leaving a sin or a hurt or some regret. And you've made this long journey and you leave that there. It's very symbolic. So I carried a rock with me and I picked one out. And this is one that I happen to have in my office. And so I carried it, and I didn't place it at that big place with everyone else, but I placed it at another place. I'm not sure why I chose it, but I did. But you'll see things like this. This is just an arrow on the path. People put rocks down so that you can see that you're going the right way. You'll see markers all along the Camino pointing you in the right direction. Very helpful. People put their rocks on top of that. Many of those markers will tell you how many kilometers you have left to go. So it's well marked. Early on, you could get lost. And I think I shared in a sermon that I trusted my GPS and I got lost. Well, anyway. So I don't know if you can see this, but this is you can up here. I don't know if you can see this online, but this is the rock that I carried with me. So I carried it in my pack. It's about this big, and it says grace. And I just thought, this is something I want to take with me, and this is something that I want more of, and I want to learn more about on this walk. And so I ended up placing it. I don't have a picture where I placed it, but I placed my rock on top of one of these markers near the end after I'd made the journey. So that's what I had. All right, so the last 110 kilometers. So Julie and our daughter Haley joined me for the last 100 kilometers. So they started in Sarria. A lot of people start in Sarria. You can do this in a week, and it's about, again, 110 kilometers. So that's how many miles? 66 miles, yeah. So we did about 12 miles a day for 6 days, and they did. And so it was a little bit unfair because I had been walking for 3 weeks, and they kind of hit the ground running. Haley's young. She just zipped up everything. So, but Julie, they both did great. And it was really wonderful. So that's day one. We started out, the three of us. I will tell you, I was so grateful to have them because, first of all, I was lonely. I was needing someone to talk to, and I was looking forward to that, and it really was wonderful. But I also feel like I got to experience what it'd be like to walk the Camino alone, and now I got to experience to walk with others. I kind of got both. They're very different things. They're very, very different things. It just depends on what you want to do and how you want to do it. So that's one day. It looked like Ireland a little bit. Kind of reminded me, but we crossed this lake on day one, and we had some big hills on day one. It was hard. So again, this is not the Meseta. This is the last 110 kilometers is more mountainous. We got a lot of rain. So that's us on the left in our ponchos. Not heavy rain, but it was cold and rainy. I don't know if it was hot and sunny, if that's worse. But I did this for 4 days. I never had sunscreen once because I didn't need it. That tells you a little bit about the weather that we had, but yeah, it got rainy. And this is the end. That is the Santiago de Compostela, the final cathedral. Well, we made it on our journey, and this is in a huge courtyard outside the cathedral where it's proposed that St. James, the relics are. And it is pretty amazing. You feel euphoric when you finish, and you just think like you've really accomplished, but you're with 1,000 people who are also finishing. And they're euphoric. It's this huge, joyful scene. And the sun came out. Like the last day, we had brilliant sun. It was marvelous. And so there we are. And what I couldn't believe is, I don't know if there's any place in the world like this, because other than probably December, January, February, every day, that courtyard is filled with pilgrims who have finished. It just keeps repeating every single day. Now, they have the final pilgrim mass inside that night, inside the cathedral, and they do a rather unique thing. It's an incredible cathedral, and most people go to the mass. They have a giant, I don't know how to describe this, incense. There's a technical term for what that is. Kirk might know. Do you know what? Anyway, if you go to a Catholic mass, sometimes the priest swings incense. Well, in Santiago, they have an enormous giant one that swings from the ceiling. Now, I asked somebody, because we were walking on one of the last days, and I said, hey, are we going to get to see that? And he said, well, you don't know. And I said, well, I thought that was a part of it. Like you go and you finish and that huge thing is swinging. And he said, you never know when they're going to do it. And he goes, the reason is you have to pay for it. Meaning groups have to pay for it ahead of time. If you just happen to go to a mass that a group has paid for it, you'll get to experience it. But anyway, let me show you. Amy's going to put this up, a video. So I want you to get a glimpse of what this looks like. All right, so that gives you a feel for the incense. So that's a big highlight for people when they get to the very end. Questions? Yes, questions. Yes.
I don't know if you want to speak to this.
Yeah.
But I'm curious as to how it was for you to be back here.
So the question was, I'll say this for the online, repeat it. How was it for me to be back here? Yeah, that's a fair question. So I met people on the journey. One person in particular that I met, it was an interesting thing. We stopped and we were tired, and I was sitting down and the sun came out, and I was just kind of taking the sun, and I got a sandwich, and I noticed on his arm he had Greek letters on a tattoo. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I was really tired, so I didn't look close enough, and it's a little embarrassing because I said, oh, what's that say in your arm? And he said, oh, that's the Greek word agape. And I thought, oh, I should have known that. Anyway, so I said, I'm a pastor. And he said, oh, and we got to chatting. He works for a Christian organization here in the States. And He said, I'm 50 years old and I just stepped down from my position. It was all good, but I feel like there's something more for me. There's something new. And I don't know what that is. And I just thought this would be a good place to come and really pray and think through that. I found a lot of that. A lot of people in life transition just trying to figure out, this is a good thing to do if you're trying to listen and pray. So that's a long way of saying, for me, I didn't feel that way. I didn't go going, God, what do you have for me next? I didn't have that sense like trying to figure it out. So coming back, I was excited to come back. I thoroughly loved this. It was very hard. There were a couple moments I thought, what have you done? But I felt really excited to come back. I will say the first probably couple weeks though, it was a little tough for me to get back into the rhythm. I really did like that rhythm of the day that was simple. And it made me ask myself, well, why aren't you doing more of a rhythm here? Like you can incorporate some more rhythmic things into your day that incorporate that. So for me, that was good. I mean, I had to learn that, but it took me a little bit. Does that answer?
Well, yes, and I was wondering too, since when you came back here, it was hot.
Yeah.
You were indoors.
Yeah.
Was that hard mentally?
Yeah. It was, when I came back, it was hot. You're in air conditioning, you're indoors. When I came back right in the heart, it was 110 when I got back. Yeah, a little bit. It was a little bit hard. Yeah.
Steve, what did you do both physically and mentally to prepare knowing you were going to have heart?
Yeah. How did I prepare physically and mentally? I don't think I did much preparation mentally. Well, I guess I did. I mean, I did read a lot and I studied a lot. So I knew what I was going to expect, maybe too much. I mean, some of it, maybe. Physically, I walked a lot. So it's an interesting, people will tell you different things. Like some people will just train. The risk though is you could overtrain and get hurt. You could strain something before you go that you've been planning for so long. So some people say, hey, you need to get to a place where you can do this. I heard a lot of people say, as long as you can walk 5 miles without stopping, then you'll be okay. Your first week will be harder. But I got to the place where right before I left, I was walking 2 or 3 times I walked 12 miles with a pack. So I was pretty confident that I was ready for that. The one thing I will tell you though, I did not train enough on hills. There were more hills than I expected. And so that took me a while. I was just walking flat around here, and I probably should have done more hiking up just to get the legs for that. So, but that's, I was around our neighborhood. I would carry my big backpack, and people would look at me like, what are you doing? I wanted to do that. I did a lot of weightlifting too, and I'm really glad I did. The pack wasn't a problem. So that I was smart enough to do, but I probably should have walked more. How long was it? Well, some people will do the entire 500 miles. Some people can do it in a month, in 30 days. That's really pushing it hard. So for me, I had about 33 days of walking. So, but some people can go further, and some people take their time and do 6 weeks. Some people, I had 2 rest days. Some people plan more rest days. You can design it however you'd like to be. Yeah. Yes.
Did you switch out shoes?
Yeah, good question. A lot of people ask me, this is a really big thing. So the question is about shoes. What do you do for shoes? It is a really important question. And if you read and study, I mean, it's an art, it's a science. I didn't know this, but they say you get about 500 miles on tennis shoes. But you don't think about that, because who thinks about how long they're, but over the span of it, it usually lasts about the long. I thought that's interesting. So I did try out 2 or 3 different shoes, and I really lucked out. So for whatever reason, I found a pair. I didn't get one blister. And we were in San Diego this past weekend, and I walked, and I got 2 blisters in 2 days. But I was so happy. So I swear by these shoes. They're called Ultra. They're like tennis shoes. Trek Ultra Olympus, I think. Swear by them. They were fabulous. But yeah, that's a good question. For people, I mean, you struggle with your shoes and getting blisters and things. It becomes a really big deal. So I was very, very fortunate that way. Yeah. Yeah, any other questions? A couple more. Yeah. Yes, no, that's a good question. The question is bathrooms. Yes. No, it's a very, very good question. Yeah, I saw some things. Yeah, I did. Yeah. It depends, like on the Meseta when it's long, and there were a couple 10-mile stretches in between towns, and you needed to know that. There was one day when I was out of water, and so I got to the next town, and I had to actually go into a place and say, I need your help, like I need some water. So I didn't plan that well. If it had been a 90-degree sunny hot day, it would have been hard. I just didn't know that it was that long in between. So yeah, so the coffee shops and the places, there are certain sections, every 5 miles there's a place to stop, and so it's really just plan it. But otherwise it's outside, and people pull off into the field or do whatever, and yeah, Steve.
Did anybody tent it or sleeping bags on the ground?
I never saw anybody use a tent. The question is, did anyone live in a tent? I theoretically you can do that, and I guess in the olden days, obviously it was, but even like in the movie The Way, you'll see somebody sleeping in a tent. Not much anymore. There are places where I guess you can do it, but I never saw it. It's you have to carry more things. It's not as practical, I think, but yeah. So I just said, yeah, Tukey. Meals. Yeah, you just there's 4 major food groups in Spain. Bread. That's kind of everything is bread. Yeah, it's hard to lose a lot of weight because you're just eating this incredible food. Yeah, you can do whatever. There are a lot of it's communal meals at some places. That was kind of fun. You can eat with others and eat with different programs. But sometimes you go into, some of them are nice. In each town there was a nice restaurant. You could sit and eat and have wine and tapas and paella, and so it was varied. The one thing that what happened with Julie and Haley, we all have different patterns. Mine was, I just wanted to keep walking. I did not want to stop. And then I got to go 5 more miles. I just wanted to go, so I would grab a sandwich and walk and eat and carry it with me, and just push through to the next town. Well, Julie and Haley were in a different rhythm. They wanted to stop and fuel, and so we were about 2 miles from finishing the entire Camino. I've been at this a long time, and I'm like, let's just get there. Like, I could taste it, like we're almost there. And the two of them are like, nope, we are stopping. We are making a full stop. We are fueling right here. And okay, so, but yeah, it's good. Yeah. Oh, I'm afraid you were going to ask that question. The question is, how heavy was my pack? I don't know. I mean, I had I had a pair of sandals, because at night you just got to put something else on your feet. I had a coat. I had 2 or 3 kind of layered sweatshirts you have to layer. I had 2, 3 pair of pants, 2, 3 different shirts. So, yeah, I mean, it was heavy enough. I didn't weigh it though, but some people, you read about the Camino, people swear minimalist. They are like, this is everything. Everything you have, you got to carry. So cut it down to minimal. You'll thank yourself. And along the way, like at one point I bought an umbrella because I thought I'm going to need this umbrella. And then I ditched it at one point. I had this big heavy book. I ditched it. I was like, I mean, anything you do to lighten your pack is good. So it just depends on what you want. Some people will do laundry every night. I didn't want to do that. But it was pretty heavy. Wi-Fi. Was there Wi-Fi everywhere? In the towns. I don't remember much when I wasn't in cell coverage, though. I think I had it. There might have been like an hour or 2 stretches here and there, but pretty much, yeah.
How much water
Yeah, good question. How much water did I carry? Um, I carried 2 big bottles of water. So like those liter bottles, I had 2 of those. And there are water, the water, the tap or public water is fine in Spain. So in city towns, there'll be fountains. You got to be a little bit careful, and you got to be able to read Spanish to know which is good and which is not good. But you'll see people walking into a small town, they'll just fill up water. It's always good to have it filled. But again, you're carrying all of it. It adds to the weight. And so it's this kind of art of, okay, it's colder today. I'm not going to need as much water. How much do I really need to carry? You know, you work out all those things. But again, these are things I don't worry about in the States. All of my concerns of the day were completely different and out of my routine. And it was so fun to have, well, I mean, part of it was to have small challenges. Sometimes here we have big challenges and big problems, and over there every day was small challenges. So, yeah, a couple more. Oh, well, how much were Americans and Spaniards, like percentage-wise? I actually didn't run across too many Americans. I walked with a couple of young women one day who were from Chile. They were 2 young friends. They were a lot of fun to talk to. I walked with a guy from Brooklyn, New York for a while. He was the guy from Brooklyn. His wife had just passed away, and he was going to place her ashes along the journey. And he was in grief. And you'll see that in the movie if you ever watch the movie that's similar. Germany, had dinner with someone from Germany, Canada. So I was around Spaniards constantly. I don't know how much the Spaniards do the Camino. They live on it. I'm sure they do some of it at some points, but it was very, very international. Russians, yeah, I've never been in a place so international, cosmopolitan, and everyone was really nice. You can bike the Camino now, and I found a lot of people ride the bike. It's about half the time. You know, you can bike it easy in 2 weeks. That was a little bit of a challenge sometimes. The last, maybe I'll stop with this, but the last 110 kilometers from Sarria got really crowded. It's popular. So I kept telling Julie and Haley, hey, you know, I had hours where I never saw anybody back there. And, but that last stretch, you're almost having to step around people a lot. And it wasn't terrible, but it was different. I mean, it was just different. You were in a mass of people towards the end. So, all right, one more. David, you get the last word. Yeah. Yeah. So the Blu-ray version of The Way has extras that... Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah, on YouTube you can find every... Now, I imagine that some hardcore Camino people would say that movie was a blessing and a curse. It propelled the popularity of this thing a lot, and so... All right, well, that wasn't a question, so one last question. Lisa, you get the last question.
This may be too personal, but
Yes.
was your spiritual experience what you anticipated, or was it surprising, and in what way?
Was my spiritual experience what I expected, or was it surprising? Oh, that's a great question. That's a really good question. I'll answer by saying this. I can now look back and go, this is what I needed. I was ready for this. I think I was getting a little bit in a pattern of some things. And I really just felt like this would be a good, healthy reset. And I think that's really been true. But it's also a good reminder. I probably need to do more mentally, spiritually, to just guard and take care. I want something like this so that I'll be a better pastor. and husband and father and that kind of thing. So, but mostly I want to just grow closer to the Lord. And this isn't for everybody. And there's many, many ways to do this. This always just internally felt when I learned about it, like this is something that has some of the elements that would be good for me. And that was proven true. So, yeah. You all are very gracious. You're very kind. You're very patient with all my bad photography and travel shows. So I will be happy to answer any more questions. I'm happy to talk about it, but I'll stick around and if you want to answer any questions. So blessings. Thank you all for coming.